Hey everyone, Dylan O'Neill here. I wanted to make a video regarding trading confirmations. So, no matter what type of trader you are, whether you're a day trader, a scalper, a long term investor, every single trader should follow a set of confirmations. So, below I listed a few of my favorite confirmations. And for me personally, each trade that I execute has to have at least two confirmations, no matter what. If a trade only has one confirmation, I'm not going to take it. So, this allows me to be very selective with my trades and only trade quality setups. So, the way confirmations work is the more confirmations a trade has, the more likely the trade is going to be profitable. So if I'm trading a setup that has 3 or 4 confirmations, I'm likely going to size up my position because the chances of that trade working out are higher. So if my average trade uses $10,000 in capital for a trade with 2 confirmations, I will likely size up to $15,000, $20,000 if I find a setup that has 3, 4, 5 confirmations. So here are the confirmations that I personally like. Throughout my trading career, these are the confirmations that I have found the most success with. So in this video, I'm going to talk about each one and show you guys an example of each one. So the first one is news and catalysts. So we'll hop into this Netflix chart. On this day, you could see this is where Netflix opened up. You could see it was pretty choppy during the first part of the day, and then it ripped higher. So the reason it ripped higher, it rallied higher, is because news came out. So right, this is February 4th. If we go to this news tab, we can see that on February 4th, let's see, this is the news that came out. It was regarding Netflix raising their subscription, their monthly charges, monthly subscription charges in Japan. So this was bullish news for the market, for Netflix, I should say, and this was the result. So this news came out right after noon Eastern time, and it absolutely ripped from 542 all the way up to 559. So that's a 17-point move in just, under an hour. So this was a huge move that I personally played, and when I saw that it had news backed up by volume's another confirmation that we'll get into, but when I saw that, the market participants thought that this news was bullish and they had a demand for the news, I jumped in on this pullback and then rode it higher. So news is very, very, very important. News is powerful, especially breaking news such as this. No one really knew that this breaking news was going to come out about Netflix, but since it did, you could see the reaction that it had on the stock. Going forward, supply and demand zones being tested. So if you guys aren't familiar with supply and demand zones, I have a link in the bio regarding InvestiTrade. That is the group chat that I'm involved with. It's a phenomenal course and group chat. They're a community of traders, like-minded traders that all help one another out. And Carmine, who is the owner, this is what he teaches. He teaches supply and demand zones, and they're very, very, very powerful. So same example, Netflix, because of this move on the news, it created a demand zone, okay? There were buyers, aggressive institutional buyers in this zone that caused the price to spike up like this. As a result, we made our zone, and you could see here very clearly that yesterday and today, Netflix dipped down into this zone that we have drawn, and it ripped up higher. So both times Netflix came down, got bought up, came down, got bought up again. So like I said before, these demand zones and supply zones are very, very, very powerful, and this is one of my favorite confirmations for any given trade. So moving forward, we have key level breakouts. So in this example, when I say key levels, I'm talking about support and resistance levels. So in this example, we're going to go over NVIDIA. So let me go to a 1 hour chart on NVIDIA, right? So I have a key level document. It's a Google Doc that I have all of the stocks that I trade. I have key levels listed, and these key levels are listed for every single InvestiTrade member. In this case, the key level was 556. So I'm going to draw this line at 556. We'll make it perfect. 556. So the reason that this is a key level, as you guys can see on this chart, is because it is a major resistance level that NVIDIA has failed to break above 3 consecutive times in a row. So with my arrow, I'm going to draw the 3 tests. Okay, these were all on different days, right? We have, this was January 11th, this was January 21st, and this was February 3rd. So they're pretty spaced out. So each time NVIDIA tries to come up to this 556 level, it is met with sellers. These sellers, the sellers prevent the stock from trading higher. So this level, 556, is where sellers are sitting, and each time NVIDIA tries to break above, sellers have been there to, like I said, deter the stock price from moving higher. So each time, it came back down, tried again, sellers were there, came back down, and tried one more time, and sellers were there yet again. So I told my group, the InvestiTrade group, Carmine's group, that if NVIDIA could break above 556 on increasing volume, that it can break out to the upside. And as you can see here, yesterday at 9:30 Eastern Time when the market opened, it immediately ripped higher, got above this 556 level, and held and just kept going all day. This was a phenomenal move that a lot of the members caught, and as you could see, the main reason behind this was the fact that we were breaking above a key level. Okay, so this was a very good trade. Using this same exact trade, we could go on and talk about relative strength and weakness. So this is one of my favorite strategies that I use every single day. What I mean by relative strength and weakness is you take an individual equity and you compare it to the overall market. You can compare it to the overall market, such as using the S&P and NASDAQ, or you can use it to compare an individual equity to another equity within its same sector. So NVIDIA, AMD, Intel, there's a few different types of chip equities that tend to correlate with one another. So in this example, we're going to compare NVIDIA's price action to that of SPX, which is the S&P 500 index. Okay, so both these charts are 5 minutes. NVIDIA 5 minute, SPX 5 minute. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in here. So as we can see, the first 5 minute of the first 5 minute candle of SPX was very strong. Same with NVIDIA. We could see this first 5 minute candle was very strong. This is where they differ, okay? So SPX made the initial high at 10:45 Eastern Time. And you could see here that NVIDIA was still at the highs. So, right, up until this point, they were pretty much correlating identical. So the difference is when SPX started to roll over, right, it pretty much gave up all of these gains. So at 11:40 a.m. Eastern Time, SPX was dipping and trying to form a new bottom. I should say a higher low. So you could see here, it came up, it opened from 3892, made a high at 3908, and then pretty much gave up all of its gains. On the other hand, at 11:40 a.m. Eastern Time, NVIDIA was nowhere near the lows. It kept making higher lows on the way up. So this is a form of relative strength, okay? So when an equity is making higher lows, whereas SPX, the S&P 500 index, is pretty much giving all of its gains away. We could see this is a big drop compared to this little pullback right here. So this is a clear example that NVIDIA was showing relative strength as compared to the overall market. Okay? I'm going to go back. So that brings us to our next point, volume increasing, right? So we could clearly see here on both the Netflix trade that I went over. We go back to Netflix. When it popped on this news, we could clearly see that the volume increased. So this was during the middle of the day. This was at around noon. So usually, not all the time, but usually at around noon, the volume dries up. It's called the lunch hour of the market. So usually during midday of the market, the volume tends to dry up a little bit, and then it'll increase later on in the day during power hour. So we can clearly see here that when this news was released, the volume spiked up drastically. So the previous 5-minute candle had 8,000 shares traded, and then when the news came out, the volume spiked from 8,000 up to 229,000. That is a drastic increase. That is significant. So this volume allows the stock to rally higher. This shows that there's a huge demand for the stock. Market participants are buying based on the news. They're buying shares, which is it's rallying the price higher. So on NVIDIA, we could see the same thing. On that key level break, the volume was very, very nice. Okay, so, and you could see different volume spikes on the way up. So it made higher lows, which is very bullish. The volume was there, and the key level breakout was there. So this trade had multiple confirmations. The next thing is breaking out of a price pattern. So this could be, there's tons of patterns out there. There's wedges, flags, head and shoulders, you name it. There's, there must be thousands of patterns that are out there that, different traders use. These are some of my favorite ones. I'll show you a pretty clear example. This is a trade that I took. I'm holding long-term shares of TDOC. So if I go to a longer-term time frame, we had a nice wedge pattern that was forming. So if I go from the high, which was 253, okay, let's see. And then we come over here and find the low, this pivot low at 149, just to give you a little. Okay, so this was a pretty clear wedge, right? So a wedge occurs when a stock makes higher lows and lower highs and pretty much gets tighter. It wedges, the price action wedges before it can break out. So similar to the support and resistance lines, we can see here that TDOC had this downtrend resistance. So each time it hit this downtrend resistance line, it failed to move higher. So here came up tried again, couldn't break above, came down, tried again, couldn't break above, and then the last time here. So I was following this wedge pattern. Like I said, this is a long-term wedge pattern, and I knew that once it broke out, it would rally higher. So the breakout happened at $208. Let's call it $209, and now we're trading at almost $300. So that's a 50% gain right there. So the longer the time frame, the more powerful the move should be. Like I said, this is a longer time frame, but these same patterns happen on intraday bases too. So you could have a 5-minute wedge, a 15-minute wedge, an hour wedge, so on and so forth. But this is a pretty clear example from what I remember of, a wedge. So same deal down here. We could use the uptrend line as support. All right, we could see it acted as support each time it was tested. And then finally, when the wedge was ready to break out, when the stock was breaking out of the wedge, you could clearly see here that it had very, a ton of momentum, and it just ripped higher. So the last point, and I pretty much went over this, is bullish and bearish price action. So if I see higher lows, lower highs, so on and so forth, this is another confirmation. And as I said with NVIDIA, this is exactly what we saw yesterday. If I go to a 5-minute chart, we can clearly see that it ripped higher, made a higher low, and what I mean that is each pullback that it had was higher than the last pullback. Okay, so this was the low of this pullback. The next pullback was higher than the previous one, so on and so forth. You could see that this pullback was higher than the other two. This one was higher, this one was higher, and so on and so forth. So the trend line, the overall direction of NVIDIA yesterday stayed intact. It wasn't broken, so it kept going higher and higher. When you see stocks that are making higher lows on any type of time frame, that is a bullish sign. We have the same for ES today. You can see that. Let me go to a 15-minute. We can see that ES was making higher lows as well. So, I told the members not to, fight the trend. It's important not to fight the trend because we're making higher lows. So if you try buying puts on a pullback, you'll probably get stopped out. So we could see here's a resistance line that ES has failed to break above a few times, and it's making higher lows. So chances are when ES gets tighter price action and continues to make higher lows and breaks out above this level, 3912.25, it should rally higher. So that's the end of the video. If you have any questions, feel free to to comment down below. Have a nice night.